it's kind of a journey. Different things that I've done and different things that I've learned have brought me to where I am today. Growing up Black in America, you are more aware of the issue of people not being treated the same. So that's something that you're aware of at a very young age. And I was always an observer and watched what was going on around me. And that was even before my dad would say things like, you should know what your surroundings are in terms of a safety factor, right? As a police officer, always know what's going on around you. But I observed people and listened to them, and seeing that, people weren't treated the same, and how I was going to navigate to get the things that I wanted, namely, which was independence and being in control of my life. So no, I wouldn't attribute one key turning point to that. Mm-hmm. From a very young age, wanted to go to college. This was without any prodding from my parents, even though it was education was extremely important and they expected it, but they didn't have to push me. They didn't even have to say it. It was something I wanted because I wanted to be, partner of the first accounting firm that I joined. I wanted to be the leader, but not the leader because it got me attention. I really wasn't comfortable with the attention, to be perfectly honest, just because I wanted to excel. I wanted to do the best that I could do at whatever it is I was going to do. I don't know that I would call anything I did, an activist action. Again, I was pretty shy and kind of stayed in the background, and I would push other people to do things. I would encourage other people to stand up for themselves and speak out for themselves. I can't think of any one thing that, what I would say would be my first activist. I don't think of myself as an activist now, to be honest. I think there are things like, the Executive Order 203, which is just the most recent, that are just so important that I couldn't sit back and not try to be a part of the change. Helping people has always been important to me. I will never turn away someone who asks for my help. But, and I don't think of myself as an activist. Yeah, I've done some, organized some marches in the last several years and, gotten people involved. And I know that's activist activity, right? But I kind of think that it's not fair to be put in a category of activists when I really came to the table kind of late. That's a tough one because, I think what we need to first do is not think of our vulnerable members as a group that can be addressed or their problem solved, because the problems are unique. They're unique whether it's Black people or Latin people or LGBTQ people. And I know I'm not naming all the groups, but and even looking at a particular group, right? Within those groups, there are different needs. And I think that's something that so many of us do, is we think we can address a group's needs and we don't look further and say, what's going on in the group, and just maybe deal with individuals and see how that can help and maybe turn into programs that will help a larger group of people. Again, kind of the grassroots issue that you spoke of earlier. Stop looking at it top down and looking at it bottom up, and how to help people that way. Too many times, we talk about the different voting groups, right? This group pulled it out for Trump, and this group pulled it out for the Dems, or Trump or the Republicans. And that doesn't mean that group all has the same ideas, needs, right? And we have to stop kind of generalizing that way and try to get further down and, kind of drill down deeper. And I think then we'll have some better responses, certainly in the region. I think in this region, because it is so conservative, that work hasn't been done to any great extent. So again, to that, we talk about groups. I can't speak for other women of color, right? I can only speak for myself. There are kind of the general barriers that I think any candidate faces: getting support, fundraising, the kind of apathy from the public, right? That they don't need my help. I can't bother to get involved, because if the issues of the day don't affect them, and this is kind of where we start getting into the discussions of privilege, right? White privilege, because they don't see the problems or the issues because things are pretty easy for them. So, when the candidates come and talk about different issues that might affect vulnerable communities or marginalized communities, that's not an issue for a lot of white people. I don't know, we are in a time where we have so many more women running and women of color running, which is huge, exciting. I mean, Madam Vice President, right? Harris. And, but we can't stop. I don't think anyone's suggesting that. We have to continue to push forward. We saw what happened when we had President Obama in the office, how he was attacked. And then we have that backlash because, people on the other side were like, we can't let this happen again. And we have to try to erase everything he did, regardless of how it might have affected everybody in a good way. They just needed to erase his legacy. And I don't think by any stretch of the imagination I have the answer to how to address that issue. But I think, and this is almost cliche-ish, I hate to say it, we do need to listen and talk more to one another. And some people will say, oh, it has to be done in person. And I think that's kind of the old way of thinking. Clearly we're in a pandemic, and clearly people are getting the work done like this via Zoom. And we have to deal with the pandemic so that we can get beyond Zoom meetings, but we can still talk to each other and relate to one another through Zoom. You're doing a lot of good work, and other people are doing a lot of good work via Zoom. We're not letting that hold us back. And so I think it's, having these discussions with, even if you start out with smaller groups and then help it grow, to see how we might make just small changes that hopefully will grow into big changes is what's really important. Probably to speak up more. Something I didn't do, as I mentioned, having been so shy and very careful about what I say. And at this point in my life, I think it's age and experience, but more age that I just don't have the patience anymore. And so I'm going to say what I feel, and I never intend to hurt anyone's feelings. That's never my intent, but I do think twice. And so there were things that probably I should have said in the past that I didn't say to certain people. And, case in point is people don't talk about race, right? It's such a difficult and emotional subject. And I can be accused of the same thing. Certainly in corporate America, it wasn't something that I was going to bring up. I had so much to lose in terms of my living, my lifeline, my job, and not to mention, if you're going to get promoted or salary or bonuses or that sort of thing. So you just didn't talk about politics for a long time or religion, and certainly not race. And now I'm more comfortable saying what I think the problems are and what things we can do to maybe start addressing some of these problems. And it's not well taken by people if they are not a person of color, Black, brown, or they don't get it. They don't want to admit that there's a problem at all. So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing for me. And, just an aside, I had 2 sisters and I had a brother, and I have a younger sister, but, she didn't grow up with us. But they all spoke their minds, right? They just, if they had a thought, they said it. And I actually admired them. I mean, a lot of times they kind of said something that maybe shouldn't have been said, or, maybe should have thought about it before they said it. But I admired that they had that confidence to speak their mind. And they dealt with whatever the consequences may have been. And yet I was the more careful one, and like I said, and thought before I spoke. But that left a lot of opportunities and things I wish I would have said and didn't. But racial inequality and systemic racism are, real issues clearly for me as a Black woman in this country. And there are no quick fixes. I wish I could look into a crystal ball and come up with the answer. I think many of us wish the same thing. But I think we need so many people to first admit there's a problem. And, this is, if you don't know you have a problem or admit you have a problem, you're not going to be able to change it. And it's important that people like you, white people, say, we have a problem. And, we need to do the work ourselves to look at ourselves. And, God knows I've done it and other Black people have done it. We're not without bias either, right? But we're not the ones in control. So we need white people to say, we're serious. We're not just, giving lip service to this effort, because it's easy for white people to walk away and say, I'm tired now. We don't walk away from it. It's every day of our lives. And we need you to stay engaged and educate other white people and, continue to educate yourselves. It's exhausting. This is, with all the successes that I've had in life, this is the one thing that exhausts me, because it's the constant microaggressions and are we ever going to get past this, and how to get people who are well-meaning for the most part to understand that some of the things they say and do are just wrong. And you get to a point where you just say, I can't do it today. I can't explain to them today, because I've done it so many times. I just need to breathe, and I need to take a break and rest and take care of myself. And, we need your shoulders to stand on as well, as well as all the other Black folks that have done that for us in the years past. I've traveled the world for business purposes, right? And so I've met a lot of different people. And I grew up in Brooklyn, as I said, and worked in New York City with this huge diversity. And so there's so much we get from diverse cultures and people, right? That enriches our lives. And I don't give up on this country, even though it hasn't been, the best country for me and other people of color. Traveling made me see so many people wanted to be here, and what we have to offer, that promise of the American dream. And we can define that dream many different ways, but we have to maintain our democracy, which, was under real threat until, the new administration came in. But I think hopefully that made people understand just how delicate a democracy is. And it has to be worked on and cultivated every day. And, we've seen more people get involved and vote, and that has to continue. We know in the past that so many people were apathetic. But if we can get this understanding that, the inclusion of diverse peoples in our republic, and how rich a country that really will truly make us, that we really already are, right? But just so many of us don't want to admit it and embrace it. That would be, for me, a dream come true. Mm-hmm. I don't fool myself. I don't see that happening in my lifetime. So what I do is in the hopes that, whether it was running for office or putting on a march, is that some other little girl or boy can say, I can do that. Mm-hmm. And, that there's a possibility. They see someone that looks like them, in different leadership positions, because that's so important for our kids too. There's another initiative I forgot to mention that I'm working on, and it's trying to get our school district to embrace a culturally responsive education, and another uphill battle. But, I learned that young woman she's in her 30s, and she told me she didn't learn about the civil rights movement when she was in school. And, there's so much that people don't know about Black history. We have this Black History Month, which frankly, I think is, I don't want to be disrespectful, but it's ridiculous that we have a month. It should be integrated into all of our history. It is this country's history, right? But the school didn't mention Martin Luther King's birthday or who Dr. King was. There's no real appreciation for the fact that this is Black History Month, and what does that mean? And let's teach our kids about the contributions of Black Americans that built this country, right? So many of the land barons and the dynasties in this family, they have that wealth because it's been on the backs of people of color and other migrants to this country. But what's happened over the years is the school books, I believe it started in Texas. I'm not positive if that's the state, but there's, a group of people who basically started publishing these school books that have literally erased a good portion of whether it's Black history or any history that doesn't make white people look good, right? And the educational system has to respond to that and respond forcefully. And so there's a group I'm working with that is trying to make those changes and, trying to work with the district to do that, so that, the ignorance that we see in this country and the discrimination and the hate is taught, right? That's taught to children by their parents. And if they don't know any better, they're not taught a better way in school, if they're not getting it at home, then there is no hope for us. That the children are our future, and we need to make sure that they are getting the full picture, good and bad, of this country. It's absolutely outrageous that, I understand some of the books are saying that, Africans came here to work. They weren't brought in chains and enslaved for years. And, the myth that, they were treated well, by their owners. It's just mind-boggling, to think that people will spread this kind of really bad information, these lies. So there are just so many fronts where work has to be done. And again, like I said, I often I'm exhausted because what do you work on today? What do I work on now? You know, how do I make an impact when there are so many things that need to be changed? Women's rights, you know, women's rights have been under attack for years. Uh, and it could make you lose hope and faith. But if there's one thing I am, is persistent. And, you know, that was something my mom said, recognized. And I've had people I've worked with who said, I remember one boss said to me, you never pick the easy route. And I can't say that I go out looking for the tough jobs, but I do welcome challenges. I mean, all you have to do is tell me that it can't be done. And I'm, oh no, it can, let me show you how. So just maintain the faith that there are good people out there like you and others. That's what keeps me going every day. And, you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my husband, John. You know, he stands by my side, regardless of my running for office and, you know, what it meant, you know, me being away from home so much, and even the things that I do, and, you know, staying up all night working my business and then the volunteer activities. And he just says, are you still up? Are you coming to bed? So I, without his support and his shoulder to lean on, you know, it would be a lot more difficult.